Hello and welcome to episode 206 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR, as always, joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva, and it is top 150 season. Evan, how's it going?
It's going well. Back from vacation and diving into shoring up the ranks and shoring up the tiers and pumping out the team previews. And make sure, if you haven't already, check out our updated coaching changes pod. I think that there was a lot of information and actionable information on that show.
Yeah, for sure. On today's show, we're going to focus on the top 150 because Evan's been diving in, as he said, to make it as clean as possible where he wants it before training camp starts. We're going to discuss recent changes that he has made. We're going to discuss a bit of news. We're also going to take 3, 4, 5 listener questions about the top 150. Before we get into it, wanted to remind everyone that this program is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Remains best ball season. Underdog, undoubtedly the best platform to play on. For details on our promos with them, you can get up to $35 credit. Head to the best ball tab on the site. Also, want to remind everyone that our bundle package is live on Establish and Run. Combines our draft kit, which covers everything you need for season-long fantasy football drafts. It combines that with our in-season package, which covers DFS as deeply as possible, along with season-long waivers, rankings, trading, etc. Get that bundle for the lowest price possible right now for a limited time. Head to the subscribe page to check that out. There is a link in the show notes. All right, Evan. People are going to be saying, Evan's been making changes. I want to hear why. Evan, you moved Austin Ekeler from 12th overall to 8th overall. Austin Ekeler is now ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Jonathan Taylor. It's only a 4-spot move, but when we're talking about the top of the draft like this, it is significant. Why move Austin Ekeler up to 8th overall?
Well, sometimes when I'm just doing a team preview, I'm examining a player from the team level, and it will give me a little bit of a different perspective on that player. And I may adjust them just based on, doing a little bit of my own, research into that player. And that was the case with Austin Ekeler. And also, just understanding position scarcity and wanting to be higher than consensus on a player that I really, really believe in. Love the situation for, love the additions that the Chargers made on the offensive line. Really believe in the trajectory of this young offense that does have a number of reliable veterans and young talent. I think that could compete to finish top 10 in the NFL and top 5 in the NFL in scoring. And Austin Ekeler, there's a bunch of guys kind of behind him in that backfield, and they're going to get mixed in and sprinkled in. But man, I think he's going to end up playing maybe 80% of the snaps for the Chargers this year and catching a ton of passes. And you go back and look at his production with Justin Herbert late in the season after Austin Ekeler came back from a brutal injury. By the way, this guy's a machine. I mean, do you remember how bad that injury was? It was it's a miracle that he came back and was effective. He tore his hamstring and, had a knee injury as well. I mean, it was a really bad injury. But he came back, and I mean, he's an absolute stud. And I wanted to have him at number 8 overall. I moved him ahead of DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs, who are my wide receivers 2 and 3. And then Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley had a minor foot procedure. I'm not super concerned about it, but it was enough for me to justify pushing Austin Ekeler ahead of him. And then Jonathan Taylor. I moved Austin Ekeler. I previously had behind Jonathan Taylor, moved him ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I think that Austin Ekeler could catch 80, 90 passes. And Jonathan Taylor, I think, would be lucky to get to 35.
Yeah, Naheem Hines obviously still in the mix with JT. It's also close here. I would not kill anyone for taking any of these guys. Hopkins, Steph Diggs, Ridley, Taylor, Eckler. I would not kill anyone for taking any of these guys with their first round pick at all. I like going running back when I can in the first round. So I agree with you on leaning towards Eckler, and I certainly would lean Eckler over JT, especially in full PPR formats. We'll talk more about the first round in depth on an upcoming podcast and kind of go player by player, because I know it's really important for people to get their first round pick right. But yeah, certainly we were showing some unders on Austin Ekeler for the prop bets thing. And I was like, guys, we can't be rooting against Austin Ekeler this season. He's too good. So we didn't take it. All right. Speaking of the Chargers, you moved Justin Jefferson ahead of Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's getting a little bit up there in the age model. I'm not sure if that's why you did it, but tell the people why you moved Justin Jefferson ahead of Keenan Allen.
Yeah. Keenan Allen also, although he soaked up a ton of targets last year from Justin Herbert, he really wasn't very efficient with his targets. He's getting up there a little bit in age. We've got Mike Williams. I think he's still way above ADP. And then Austin Ekeler is back. And Austin Ekeler missed a big chunk of last season. And so, we still got Keenan Allen, I think, ahead of ADP still. But I wanted to get Justin Jefferson just as the young talent. He had his career trajectory is insane. It's based off only one season, of course. But, to come in and set the NFL record for receiving yards in a passing game that, wasn't hyper voluminous, and he had to compete with Adam Thielen, a very established veteran. Coming in and doing that is just it's spectacular. And it's possible that even at wide receiver 6, I've still got Justin Jefferson too low.
Well, one of the things I think about every time that we talk about Justin Jefferson is when Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson played together, Jamar Chase was more productive. And I was like, God, man. I know. I love these Bengals. This Bengals offense is going to be so fun. We're not going to talk about them today, but my God, so fun. And I've been building a bunch of Bengals stacks with best ball stuff. It's been amazing. All right. Chris Godwin, you moved down below the Rams guys. So you had Godwin ahead of Woods and Cooper Kupp. You've moved Chris Godwin down below Woods and Cooper Kupp. I like this move. You guys know me. I absolutely love Chris Godwin, but I was completely out on him last year, and I doubt I'll be too excited to take him this year either. Why move Godwin behind the Rams guys?
Yeah, it's another case of when I'm doing drafts and then I find myself on the board and in position to select guys, and I've got like this little tier and I'm trying to decide between Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. Like, I'm taking Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp over Chris Godwin. It's really that simple. I do want, my convictions to line with my top 150, and just to be completely transparent on how I would draft these guys. And they're very, very close. We're talking about on the margins here. This is not, a significant shift, but it is significant when you are in that position in, say, like the late 4th or early 5th round to make this decision. And I think that the best decision is to go with Woods or Kupp. Woods slightly ahead of Kupp, and then Kupp slightly ahead of Godwin in a passing game that I think will be elevated by Matthew Stafford. I think we're going to see a great season from Matthew Stafford and the Sean McVay offense. And these guys are still not very challenged for targets. Mm-hmm. I think that Tyler Higbee has breakout potential this year, but Tutu Atwell, Deshaun Jackson, these guys, Van Jefferson, I don't think that they don't project for big target shares. And so I think that Woods and Kupp are still going to be clearly atop the target distribution heap. And then we're going to see an elevation of efficiency from them with the quarterback upgrade.
Yeah, it was very obvious Sean McVay felt hamstrung by Jared Goff. And so I think we're going to see the full Sean McVay experience now with strong-armed Matthew Stafford. Stick with the quarterback position here. You flipped Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. All these guys, I don't know. I have a hard time. I actually think I agree with you that Lamar should be number 1. Lamar Jackson should be number 1. Our projections have Josh Allen like way ahead of Lamar, and that was because Josh Allen accounts for such a high percentage of Buffalo's touchdowns, the rushing, and they throw at such a ridiculously high rate. But man, I prefer Lamar. I know some people prefer Josh Allen. I know most people prefer Patrick Mahomes. I know some people prefer Kyler Murray. But anyways, tell the people what you're thinking now at the top of the quarterback position. And by the way, that doesn't mean you should take any of these guys real early. Like, these guys are probably going to go too early in most home leagues, I would say.
Yeah, Mahomes' ADP is significantly higher than the other guys. I hate to say this, but I don't think you can draft him right now where his ADP is.
Yeah.
Because you can get these other guys who can absolutely outscore him a full round later, if not more. Josh Allen outscored him last year. Lamar Jackson outscored him the year before. Kyler Murray can absolutely outscore Patrick Mahomes. So what I did really was I just bunched them all together in the top 150. It's Lamar, Mahomes, Allen, Kyler Murray. You can make a case for any of these guys as the overall quarterback one. I'm conceding that. And I'm also conceding that I don't know, how this is going to go. And it's sort of like a hedge position almost. But it's an honest hedge because I just don't know, how these things are going to go. So I just jammed them all together.
Yeah. And I think that's totally fine to think about quarterbacks in tiers. And by the way, I don't think it's that crazy to think that Dak or Russ or Justin Herbert can be in the mix with these guys also. And you can get them even later. So
a lot later.
So yeah, I mean, it's not crazy at all. As usual, the quarterback position remains very, very deep. I do think though the first 7, 8 guys though are really, really strong. And Leone's talked about being on top of that, how the position has changed to all these guys that are running and the throw rates and all that. Okay, let's get to outliers. So these are Silva's outliers in the first 6 rounds only we're going to talk about today. Guys that Silva is either much higher on or much lower on than the market. We'll start with Tyler Lockett. You have Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 16. His underdog ADP is wide receiver 20. His FFPC ADP is wide receiver 22. So significantly higher on Tyler Lockett. He had some absolutely massive games last year. And then he had some really, really bad games. He'll say, I think, if you ask him, that he was banged up and he was really hurt down the stretch last year. But man, he was really tough to play. Like wasn't even consideration for DFS for much of the last month, 2 months of the season. So I know we're high. I know you're high on Tyler Lockett every single year. I want to be high on Tyler Lockett this year again. Are you giving him an out on the injury? Is this a Shane Waldron thing? Why so much higher than consensus on Tyler Lockett?
I mean, the dude is really tough, by the way. I mean, I don't think his snap count really even, his snap counts really weren't even going down when he was banged up. He was banged up down the stretch of last season. He returns as, a guy with whom Russell Wilson has just a long track record of incredible chemistry and incredible efficiency. And as we mentioned on the coaching staff pod, a really, really vice grip secure target share in the offense. It's not going anywhere. DK Metcalf may have passed him as the number 1. He's still a really close number 2. And I mean, he's not. I mean, I don't think Dwayne Eskridge is going to jump in and grab a ton of targets from him. I think that Gerald Everett was a nice real life signing, and I think he could have some decent games for Seattle. But he's not going to come in and close in on Tyler Lockett's target share. I mean, it's kind of the same thing that we were targeting last year with regard to Seattle stacking them, because at the top of the passing game pecking order, those target shares are so solid and locked in with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and rounding it out with Russell Wilson, who is affordable in drafts this year. I don't know. We've had a lot of success being ahead of market on Tyler Lockett, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to bang that drum.
In that same range, Adam Thielen, you have as wide receiver 17, underdog ADP is wide receiver 23, FFPC is wide receiver 24. This might have something to do with Adam Thielen's age. It might have something to do with his unsustainable touchdown rate from last year. It might be something to do with Justin Jefferson's emergence, who we already talked about. But Adam Thielen still, I mean, they are scheming things to him at the goal line. There's no doubt about that. I agree that his touchdown rate is unsustainable. I actually have a bet on his under touchdown prop for this year. But still, I like Adam Thielen, wide receiver 17, way ahead of market on him. Talk to the people about Adam Thielen.
The analysis is very similar to Tyler Lockett because you have a long sustained history of chemistry between Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen. That kind of stuff is bankable year over year. You have, the young kid has come in and probably overtaken Adam Thielen, as DK Metcalf did to Tyler Lockett, as, the most dynamic receiver on the team. But then, there's not a ton of other guys that are going to, be stealing a ton of targets from Adam Thielen. I mean, we think that Irv Smith is, he's an ascending player. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even Mike Zimmer came out and said, hey, he's not going to, become a full-time player this year. I do think he's going to splash in some big games this year. But there's really no third receiver of consequence. So Adam Thielen is just a rock solid pick. And I'm very comfortable. I guess he's not sexy, and that's why his ADP is a little bit lower. I feel great about being ahead of his ADP, just like I was last year, and we're going to continue to do that.
Oh, man, I took him so many times in the third, fourth round last year, like every single time. And I don't feel as strongly this year, but I do like being ahead of market on Adam Thielen. Odell Beckham, you have him as wide receiver 23. Underdog ADP is wide receiver 28, same as FFPC wide receiver 28. We know about Odell Beckham's natural talent. He has not done it since he's been in Cleveland, and attitude issues, health issues, run-centric issues, quarterback issues. You can make a lot of cases for why it hasn't clicked for Odell Beckham, but it's been a while since he's like taken a 5-yard slant to the house. And I always thought that those plays were unsustainable anyways. He just clustered a bunch of them together with the Giants, but maybe it's something injury related. I know you're high on Odell. I think you actually flipped Odell ahead of DJ Chark, who I know you like a lot as well. So tell people about that ranking change and why being so high on Odell.
Well, DJ Chark, I mean, we're still really ahead of his ADP because he's at wide receiver 32 on Football Guys Championship. And then, as you mentioned, I mean, I like both of these guys where they're being drafted and willing to take them a few spots ahead of their ADP. I think it's a good year to draft Odell. The Browns are going to run a ton of play action. Who can go get the downfield play action on the team better than Odell? Nobody else can. And then if you look at the way that the Browns opened up their passing game down the stretch last year, and this was without Odell, and it was with Jarvis Landry playing at significantly less than 100%. I mean, they were out trotting out like Donovan Peoples-Jones and
Hollywood Higgins, the real Hollywood.
Well, Hollywood, he's a baller. The way that they opened it, I mean, and that was in the first year of Kevin Stefanski's offense with no offseason, no training camp, or barely any training camp, no preseason games. And as the season progressed, Baker got better, and Kevin Stefanski showed more trust in him after those wind-affected games around midseason. I mean, their pass attempt volume really spiked, and Baker played really well. I mean, that was the best we've seen Baker play since his rookie year, maybe in his entire career. I think he had 11 touchdowns and 1 interception with an additional rushing touchdown over their final 6 games. If they can carry that over, I don't think that Kevin Stefanski is necessarily like a run-first coach. I think he's a smart coach, and he's going to do – and I think he actually believes more in using the pass to set up the run. So I think that this is a good year to draft Odell. This is the cheapest he's been since his rookie year, and so that's why I'm comfortable being ahead of ADP on him.
This team's going to score a lot of touchdowns, man. I mean, their offensive line is so loaded, and their team's going to score. They're going to be really, really good, are the Cleveland Browns for sure. You mentioned DJ Chark already. You have him wide receiver 24 on Underdog. DJ Chark is wide receiver 34. And I can explain to you the bear case, I think, why people are out on DJ Chark or lower than you on DJ Chark. It's just they're not sure that DJ Chark is going to command more targets than Laviska and Marvin Jones. Like, I don't think it would surprise people if any of those three led the team in targets. I agree with you that Chark is the best natural talent, but there's so many Laviska stands out there, and Marvin Jones is always in the mix. So, yeah, I think you're just more confident than the rest of the field that Chark is going to lead the team in targets. Are you following what I'm saying there?
Yeah. Another case against them is that Urban Meyer had a history of using wide receivers in specific roles at Ohio State. And that's why Michael Thomas was underdrafted in real life. Yeah. Terry McLaurin was way underdrafted. It's because they were kind of difficult to evaluate because they really they had specific roles. If you go back and watch Paris Campbell at Ohio State, you watch his highlights, it's like everything's a drag route. Mm-hmm. You go back and watch Terry McLaurin, everything's like a downfield target. Michael Thomas, he played a specific, kind of one-trick role. And these guys wound up being really underdrafted by the actual NFL. And so if he does that, I think this DJ Chark would be the perimeter deep threat role player. Marvin Jones would be like the guy in the middle, and then Chenault, I think, would be the run after catch guy. So that's another knock against DJ Chark. And I don't know, I wouldn't say that I'm souring on him, but I mean I get both perspectives on him. So I don't know. I think the ranking here and the evaluation is actually a work in progress right now.
Okay. 2 more outliers I want to mention here. We already talked about DeAndre Swift on the last episode. Go ahead and scroll back to previous episode for that. DeAndre Swift, Silva has as RB20 underdog in FFPC. Both he's the RB16. And then DeVante Parker. You have DeVante Parker wide receiver 40. His ADP is somewhere around wide receiver 55. DeVante Parker is a grown-ass man. And I know that they added Jalen Waddle. I know they added Will Fuller. I know Jasicki's back. I know we have questions about Tua. But, man, I would bet on talent on DeVante Parker this late for sure. Just seems like a no-brainer to me. I know you're shocked that DeVante Parker was wide receiver 55 ADP right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at overall ranks, like I have him 5 rounds ahead of where he's going in drafts. So, I mean, it's not even that I think he's going to blow it up, but I think he's in a pretty good position here. The team has invested in him long-term. I expect a nice, sizable second-year leap from Tua. He's really unchallenged for playing time. I mean, I think he's pretty clearly at the top of the receiver core. I mean, you can make an argument that Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle are, maybe better talents. I don't know. DeVante Parker's pretty damn good talent. Mm-hmm. And Will Fuller, and I think that, because they have the depth at receiver, I think that he's going to be the guy. DeVante Parker is going to be the guy who is unaffected by that. It would make a lot more sense for them to ease in Jalen Waddle as a rookie and Will Fuller, who has the injury track record with guys like Lynn Bowden and, the Jakeem Grant or Albert Wilson, Preston Williams. I think that those guys are going to experience the rotational effect, and DeVante Parker is going to be the full-time player. And I mean, I was listening to Leone and Ben Gretsch's podcasts, which are really good. I mean, they're freaking long. These nerds can just talk forever, can't they? I mean, well, we are getting to Leone though, because it looks like he went outside recently. Did you notice? Yeah,
he looks a little bit more color in his skin.
Yeah. So, but I think DeVante Parker's the number one, and I don't know why he's going in the 12th round. He should be going in the 7th or 8th round.
Yeah. For you guys that don't know, we've gotten so big time. We have a podcast network now, and inside the podcast network is established The Edge. Highly, highly, highly recommend you check out the pods that Leone's doing with Ben Gretsch right now, going player by player and team by team through the entire NFL. By the way, I did take this morning, I took unders on both Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller season-long receiving yardage props. So agree with you on the rotation and easing in and all that. A couple quick news stories I want to hit before we get to listener questions. Mike Reese on Damien Harris. This was no surprise, but, he comes out and says that Damien Harris is the surefire RB1, and it kind of makes me think, and I think a lot of people have thought this already, Sony Michel is really likely, or at least has a chance to be cut, leaving them with Ramondre Stevenson, James White, and they still have Brandon Bolden on the roster. You have Damien Harris, 98th overall, RB37. I mean, I like him. He's not going to catch a ton of passes, but it's a really strong offensive line. And if Mac Jones gets in there, it gives Damien Harris more upside to touchdowns because Cam Newton won't be in there stealing goal line reps. I think I still prefer Trey Sermon over Damien Harris in that range, but I do prefer Damien Harris to guys like Tony Pollard and Ronald Jones and Zach Moss. So, I thought the story from Mike Reese today was nothing new, but I thought it was confirmation for people, and that might send his ADP up a little bit. Where are you at on Damien Harris?
Yeah, he's going to be a really touchdown and yardage reliant player. And he's not going to catch any passes in the same backfield as James White.
Yeah.
And he needs Cam Newton to get out of there. You're right. But I don't know. It's some of the rhetoric entering camp. It seems like Cam Newton is solidly the starter for the Patriots. I don't know how long that will last, but I mean, Damien Harris, and then he gets vultured at the goal line for as long as Cam is in there. I like him okay, but I think that people are a little too bullish on him. I don't really. He's going to be really touchdown dependent, and he's not going to score many touchdowns with Cam Newton in there. That's a problem. Like, I don't want guys that, hey, he might average 5.5 yards per carry in a game, run for 91 yards. He catches 0 passes and doesn't score a touchdown. He gives me 9.1 points. Like, you can have that. I don't want that.
Yeah, and he's going in the same range as other guys with that profile. Zach Moss has that same kind of profile, and Ronald Jones has a bit of that profile as well. And so, yeah, I think
Ronald Jones. I mean, God, give it up already. What, are people still drafting him?
Yes.
And I mean, it's enough already. God.
One more news story here. Saquon Barkley went on the Rich Eisen show and made some headlines because he wouldn't commit. Rich Eisen asked him flat out, will you be ready for week 1? And he kind of sidestepped the question. I don't think it means much, but in combination with what Jordan Ronan came on the podcast and told us, and by the way, you can go back and listen to our chat with Jordan Ronan. It seems like their plan at least is to ease him in. You still have Barkley at 4th overall. Are you wavering at all on that? Do you have any heightened concern around Saquon's knee and the Giants easing him in?
Yeah, a little bit. I do. I mean, it's a tough one, man. It's really tough. You know, he still has a chance to catch 70+ passes, and the guy behind him, Derrick Henry, might catch 20. So I don't know. I mean, it's a really tough situation right now. I don't know what to think. I mean, what do you think?
I think he will be eased in to start the season because the Giants are such donkeys that they're going to want to give him another contract. And so they don't want to blow him up this year when they're not really in contention. They think they're going to have Saquon for the next 6 years.
Well, they better be in contention or else Dave Gettleman's going to get fired.
Yeah. I mean, they're a mess. But I think they're thinking about Saquon for the long term when if I drafted Saquon Barkley 2nd overall, I would run him into the ground. I would never draft him 2nd overall, but I would run him into the ground 400 times. And then when his rookie contract expired, let him go, call me a monster, but that's what
and also, sometimes teams have these plans to ease guys in, and then it's just no, we can't do this,
Exactly, especially if he looks really good. So yeah, I think it's something to watch.
They did take steps, though. They drafted a guy, and they signed DeVante Parker. So they prepared for this. But I think it's when push comes to shove, by game 2, it's going to be we're not playing DeVante Parker over Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. All right. We asked for listener questions. Appreciate everyone who sent them in. We're going to run through 4 of them here. First one from Rob Hill. He says, Evan has Travis Kelce at 14th overall. That's way below market, especially on Underdog. Would love to hear Evan's thought process on that rank beyond the fact that he obviously thinks there are better running back, wide receiver available early. Are there tight ends Evan is targeting later that makes him more comfortable fading Kelce? Yes, Kelce 14th overall. Evan, the people are up in arms. What say you?
Yeah, I know. I'm working on it. There's a lot of good picks in that range. There's a lot of good picks, and separating them. I mean, this is another situation too where, you shouldn't trust or use the rankings as a Bible. And hey, if you want to go get Travis Kelce, and draft him over DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs and Austin Ekeler, be my guest. You should absolutely have personal preferences that you build into your own thought process when you are on the clock. But right now, I don't know, I had him at 9, and then I moved him down to 12, and then I moved him down to 14. It wasn't necessarily even because I moved him down. It was because I moved other guys up. So it's a work in progress. I totally hear I love Travis Kelce, so I'll get it right. I don't know that it's right now though.
Well, I would say this for Underdog, when we're talking best ball, we actually have Travis Kelce 6th overall in our Underdog specific rankings. And that's because in best ball, the onesie positions, you can't stream them through. And so there's a big difference between best ball and managed leagues. And we're gonna do a whole podcast on this, but one thing you can do is stream and manage leagues. For example, I'd have wide receivers moved up in managed league rankings because there's going to be so many running back injuries, and I can capitalize that through waivers and trades. In best ball, obviously I can't. And so for tight ends and for quarterbacks in managed leagues, I can stream. Things are going to happen. I can stream matchups, I can stream injuries, et cetera, et cetera. In best ball, you can't. So I know what you're saying. Yeah. Evan's ranks are more for managed. For Underdog specific, I'd encourage people to use our Underdog specific rankings, which you can upload straight the Underdog. And again, we have Travis Kelce 6th overall there. Tight end in general.
If you're laser focused on Underdog right now, just be aware that the top 150 is more for managed leagues.
Yes.
And that's a really good point. And I know that we had a question about TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah.
I would say I would give almost the same answer there. People are sort of reaching for TJ Hawkinson right now on Underdog. I think that we have him as he's the tight end 5 in the top 150 and on Underdog, or tight end 6. It's not, there's not a big gap there, but people are, because it's best ball, trying to shore up that onesie position with a guy that they think could have an explosion year, which I do think that Hawkinson can do that, but they are taking him, well above ahead this guy really has been like a streamer for the last 2 years. We're building in a lot of, we're building in a big jump for TJ Hawkinson. And so I think people are taking him a little bit too high, at least as it would pertain to managed leagues. I do understand that approach in best ball.
Yeah, we have TJ Hawkinson as the tight end 6, about a round and a half or so behind Mark Andrews there. Obviously, the first 4 guys everybody knows about at the tight end position. I would say for tight ends in general, though, like I want this year to get one of maybe the top 9, with the 9th being like that Goddard, Noah Fant, Tyler Higbee tier. If I had to punt it off late, I would probably be like Gesicki, Irv Smith, Robert Tonyan. Those would be the guys that I think I would punt it off with late for tight end. I know we had a couple of questions about that. All right, question 2 from James. He said, what are your thoughts on drafting Trey Sermon and Raheem Mostert on the same fantasy team? Reports of San Francisco wanting to run the ball more than 500 times in 2021. Is that Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram 2017 type season not realistic? Before you go, Evan, I'll say this. I think that the 49ers are going to run the ball 500 times this year. They ran it 437 times last year, and they weren't even very good. This year, and that was only 16 games. This year, it's 17 games. They have like one of the softest schedules I've ever seen in my entire life. So yeah, I think 500 is a pretty good line. Drafting both on the same team, though, that's a different question, which I probably wouldn't do. But what do you think about Sermon and Mostert on the same team this year?
Yeah, it's funny, like a month and a half ago or so, Leone Herzig and I had a conversation about this very question. Yeah, I was drafting in a pretty early league, and I had a chance to get Trey Sermon and then come back and get Mostert and put them on the same team. I think it was best ball.
Yeah, I think that was the MFL 10, right?
Yeah, the MFL 10 of death. I didn't wind up doing it, but so you have this really, really soft schedule that is going to create a lot of positive game script. You have this, Cam Newtonian, Patrick Mahomesian talent about to emerge as the quarterback in San Francisco. And we've seen how guys like that can elevate the rushing attack around them. The offensive line, I think, looks better than it was last year in San Francisco. And you have, guys that are complementary stylistically in Trey Sermon and Raheem Mostert. I think that Raheem Mostert, he's more like the speed back who's going to end up with fewer touches than Trey Sermon. And Trey Sermon will be more of like the early down workhorse type. But I think they're going to use both of those guys. And they might even incorporate a third, which could make it a little bit tricky, like Wayne Gallman. But if we can get it down to 2 and we can get to that number of rushing attempts, which again is plausible based on the game script, based on Kyle Shanahan's willingness to just smack the B button over and over and over again if it's working, and based on the efficiency that we can anticipate based on the offensive environment, I think at the end of the day, you're trying to get guys who can beat their ADP, right? So what's Trey Sermon's ADP? Around like RB 30, and then Mostert is like right behind him or maybe a little bit ahead of him. I think both the guys can finish as top 15 fantasy backs. So yes, I think that you definitely can draft them on the same team if you're looking for ADP beaters. And, for the most part, like that's what we're looking for.
I'll say a couple things. First, I prefer Trey Sermon pretty strongly to Raheem Mostert. We've talked about this a bunch. I think Sermon is an ascending player, obviously young. Raheem Mostert's on the back burner of his career. Second thing I would say is when you have both of them on a managed team, like how do you know who to start? Let's say they're splitting like down the middle. Like, are you going to start both of them?
No. You don't worry about that. You just get the studs on your team. You get the ADP beaters on your team, and then you worry about that stuff later.
Yeah. So, but how are both of them going to find a ceiling in a given week? I hear you that it's probably going to shake itself out, but if it doesn't, I don't think they're both going to find ceiling games. There's only so many touchdowns to go around in a given week, and I want to find ceiling weeks out of my players so I can win weeks against my opponents.
You let your opponents worry about that kind of stuff. You just get the ADP beaters, and then you go smack them.
All right. Last question we're going to do comes from Easton, number 3. He says, why all the Michael Gallup love again when Michael Gallup was a disappointment while Dak was healthy last season? It's a reasonable point. I mean, Michael Gallup did go 6, 138-1 in week 3, which was a huge game. But yeah, he was kind of disappointing in the other Dak games, especially because Dak was throwing the ball so many times in those other games. We know Michael Gallup was running like straight vertical streaker routes in those games. But yeah, I guess my biggest take on Michael Gallup is he's so much cheaper than Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. But I understand why people are saying that, why are people excited about Michael Gallup? But go ahead on him.
Well, although it was spiked by that one game that you mentioned. In the first 4 games before Dak went out in week 5, Michael Gallup was on pace for 1,100 yards in those first 4 games. And then the rest of the way, his pace was like 700 yards with Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
He really became sort of like a role player last year, running, a lot of deep routes. Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb were the shorter ADOT high percentage receivers. And I mean, I think that's going to hold this year, but I think it's a bet on talent situation. It's a bet on value situation too. I mean, recency bias is one of our best weapons. When it comes to trying to find value in the middle and late rounds of fantasy drafts. And the recency bias is anti-Michael Gallup because some people got burned by him. Some people, we're taking him pretty early last year. He was a 5th or 6th round pick. Now he's like 8th or 9th round. And I think that it's worth it to go back to that well. He's a young, talented player in a great passing attack, in an offense that could absolutely lead the NFL in scoring. So stop worrying about, the 3 slow games last year in 4 starts with Dak Prescott, and start thinking about – this is why I think that reading the team previews can be beneficial, because you look at it from a team level. You're not just like, oh, this guy burned me last year. Zoom out, look at it from a team level, and then you can really find value in a guy like Michael Gallup.
I'll say this. I think that on platforms like Underdog and FFPC and stuff like that, Gallup's going to go higher than he will in like a normal home league. Like in a normal home league that people are playing in, like nobody's taking the Cowboys number 3 wide receiver in the 7th round. But on Underdog, his ADP is up to 74th overall. So he's right around guys now like Chark and Tyler Boyd and Deebo Samuel and Jerry Jeudy and Juju and Laviska Shenault. And, I can see taking all those guys over Michael Gallup, but you're going to be able to get Michael Gallup way later in home leagues and stuff like that.
And there's also merit to, again, from a team level, looking at like, hey, let's say Amari Cooper misses 3 or 4 games, or CeeDee Lamb misses 3 or 4 games. All of a sudden, we just got in the 8th or 9th round, the number 2 receiver in, the top 3 passing offense. And, who cares about what happened in the 3 bad starts with Dak Prescott the year before?
Yeah.
So, there is absolutely justification to be had from just investing in a really good offense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's an argument that I made on the podcast yesterday for Mecole Hardman. If something happened to Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, forget about it. Okay. Hope you enjoyed this look at Silva's top 150. Please head to the site to check it out. It's exportable, downloadable, along with all our rankings for every other possible format. We'll be back next week for more podcasts. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube. It is indeed free. For producer Luke, for Evan, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.